Elon, how have you done this? These projects are so, these PayPal, SolarCity, Tesla, SpaceX, they're so spectacularly different. They're such ambitious projects at scale. How on earth has one person been able to innovate in this way? What is it about you?
I don't know, actually.
시가총액 1000조를 돌파하며 전기자동차 산업의 선봉장이자 지속가능한 에너지로의 전 세계적 전환을 가속화하는 테슬라. 지구를 지속가능한 에너지 사회로 만든 후 궁극적으로 우주를 무대로 활동하는 종족, 즉 인류를 다행성 종족으로 확장시킬 수 있는 스페이스X.
3, 2, 1, ignition, and
liftoff. Go Falcon, go Starlink. Stage 1 propulsion is now.
솔라루프를 통해 기존 태양광 패널 설치 비용을 혁신적으로 절감하며 화석 연료가 아닌 친환경 에너지 산업의 확산을 꿈꾸는 솔라시티. 기존 굴착기는 8주에 1.6km의 터널을 뚫을 수 있지만 새로 개발한 푸르프록 신형 굴착기는 일주일이면 가능합니다. 라스베가스 지하 터널을 시작으로 인류의 교통 체증을 없애기 위해 노력하는 보링 컴퍼니. 온라인 결제의 완벽한 게임 체인저, 안전하며 신뢰도 높은 금융거래 시스템인 페이팔. 이 모든 것을 혼자서 달성해낸 세계 최고의 부자이자 이 시대의 혁신가, 그리고 미래의 설계자인 일론 머스크. 시간은 누구에게나 공평하게 24시간이 주어지고 주어진 시간을 어떻게 보내느냐에 따라 개인이 성취 성공이 결정되는 건 누구나 아는 자명한 사실입니다. 한정된 시간 속에서 일론은 어떻게 이렇게 많은 일들을 해낼 수 있었을까요?
I do think there's a good framework for thinking is physics, you know, the sort of first principles reasoning. Boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there, as opposed to reasoning by analogy. Through most of our life, we get through life by reasoning by analogy, which essentially means kind of copying what other people do with slight variations. And you have to do that, otherwise it's mentally, you wouldn't be able to get through the day. But when you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Physics is really sort of figured out how to discover new things that are counterintuitive, like quantum mechanics. It's really counterintuitive.
제1원칙은 일론이 만든 게 아니라 머나먼 역사로부터 시작됩니다. 철학에서 제1원칙은 다른 명제 혹은 가정에서 유추할 수 없는 기초 명제라고 아리스토텔레스는 정의했습니다. 나는 생각한다, 고로 존재한다. 모든 것을 의심한 철학자 르네 데카르트. 그는 더 이상 의심할 수 없는 진실만 남을 때까지 체계적으로 의심할 수 있는 모든 것을 의심하라고 말합니다. 이것을 우리는 흔히 데카르트식 의문이라고 합니다. 즉, 발견한 의심할 수 없는 명제가 제1원칙이라고 사고방식을 발전시켰습니다. 연역과 논증이 출발점이 되는 제1원칙을 일론은 어떻게 자신의 사업에 적용했을까요?
And then I think it's also important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. So the normal way that we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. We're doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it's like what other people are doing. Because it's kind of mentally easier to reason by analogy rather than from first principles. But by first principles is kind of a physics way of looking at the world, and what that really means is you kind of boil things down to the most fundamental truths. And say, okay, what are we sure is true, or as sure as possible is true? And then reason up from there. That takes a lot more mental energy.
Give me an example of that. Like, what's one thing that you've done that on that you feel has worked for you?
Sure. So somebody could say, in fact, people do, that battery packs are really expensive, and that's just the way they'll always be, because that's the way they've been in the past. You're like, well, no, that's pretty dumb. You know, because if you applied that reasoning to anything new, then you wouldn't be able to ever get to that new thing.
Right.
And for batteries, they would say, oh, it's going to cost, you know, historically it's cost $600 per kilowatt hour, and so it's not going to be much better than that in the future. And you say, no, okay, well, what are the batteries made of? So first principles would be to say, okay, what are the material constituents of the batteries? What is the spot market value of the material constituents? So you can say, okay, it's got cobalt, nickel, aluminum, carbon, and some polymers for separation, and a steel can. So break that down on a material basis and say, okay, what if we bought that in the London Metal Exchange, what would each of those things cost? Like, oh, geez, it's like $80 per kilowatt hour. So clearly, you just need to think of clever ways to take those materials and combine them into the shape of a battery cell, and you can have batteries that are much, much cheaper than anyone realizes.